The flagship smartwatch market is easily one of the busiest right now, with options like the Pixel Watch 4, the Samsung Galaxy Watch 8 Classic, and the newly launched OPPO Watch X3. So it's pretty natural to be confused between them if you're planning on buying one for yourself. Now, I've been switching between them over the past few weeks, working out with them, going to yoga, just wearing them around, and even on quick runs and bike rides. And one thing became very clear: smartwatches today mostly fall into two categories. They're either really smart and compact with health features, or they have excellent battery life. But getting both in the same package is still pretty rare, or at least that's what I thought going into this. All right, so design is one of the most important things with any timepiece, and that applies to smartwatches as well. The Pixel Watch 4, in comparison to the other two, looks a lot less like a serious watch and more like a clean little gadget that you strap to your wrist. But that also works in its favor because it's lighter than the other ones. The strap quality is also quite good, and it didn't cause any irritation during my workouts. My only issue is that the watch itself feels a bit too small, even with my wrist, and that can make it look a little toy-like. So that does make it a little bit harder to pick this one for something like casual business meetings compared with the other two. The Samsung Galaxy Watch 8 Classic, on the other hand, is an absolute looker. It's got a lot going for it. The rotating bezel is genuinely practical, and honestly, it just doubles up as a great fidget toy. The strap quality is great here, and even for longer hours, wearing this watch doesn't cause any kind of irritation. In terms of build, you're getting a stainless steel frame, which is great for durability, but the trade-off here is the weight. At around 64 grams, it does start to feel a bit heavy after wearing it all day, especially during workouts, and that does also make it tough to wear while you're sleeping at night, because you always feel like there's something heavy on your wrist when you're turning and twisting in your bed. Now, the Apple Watch X3, on the other hand, finds a really nice middle ground. It looks luxurious, but at the same time, it's still lightweight at around 43 grams, which is just about 6 grams heavier than the Pixel Watch 4, but still offers way more design elements. And a big part comes down to the material. So OPPO is using aerospace grade titanium here, so you're still getting that solid, durable feel, but without the extra weight. It's also more resistant to things like corrosion, which helps in the long run. And then there's the military grade certification, which means that the watch has already gone through a range of extreme tests and has still come out fine. Now, this is also found on the Galaxy Watch 8 Classic, but it is missing from the Pixel Watch 4. Now, the Watch X3 also has a lot of little design details on the face, so it doesn't feel plain and boring. The gray band has these metal links on either side, followed by a more traditional strap, which gives it a bit of that style accessory vibe rather than just looking like a typical smartwatch. The black one is more traditional, but looks more substantial than the Pixel 4. Now, all three smartwatches come with an IP68 rating and are water resistant up to 50 meters, so they're fine for things like swimming. But the Apple Watch X3 goes a step further with IP69 rating, which means that it can handle high pressure water jets. Now, realistically, I'm not really sure how often you'll find yourself in that situation, but it's a nice thing to have. Moving on to the display, honestly, there isn't a huge difference between the three. So all of them have excellent displays, and they should, because that's what you're looking at all the time. The Apple Watch X3 and the Pixel Watch 4 both use LTPO AMOLED panels, while Samsung is using a Super AMOLED display. In real world use though, they all look great, they're sharp, they're vibrant, no real complaints there. Now, one thing to note is that the Apple Watch X3 gives you a slightly larger display at 1.5 inches compared to 1.34 on the Samsung and 1.4 on the Pixel. So you do get a little bit of more screen real estate to work with. Now, in terms of design, OPPO and Samsung both go with a flat display. The Pixel Watch 4, on the other hand, has a curved glass design, which looks nice, but I'll be honest with you, it makes me a little bit nervous every time I bump it against the edge of the table or the wall or a door handle, but that might just be me being clumsy. To be fair, I didn't end up scratching it, probably thanks to the Gorilla Glass 5, but the Apple Watch X3 and the Galaxy Watch 8 Classic have an advantage here. Both of them use sapphire crystal glass, which has a Mohs hardness rating of 9, second only to diamond. So in terms of scratch resistance and overall durability, they're just on another level compared to regular glass. They can handle everyday bumps, rough use, and even higher temperatures much better than just, again, typical glass. As far as brightness, both the Galaxy Watch 8 Classic and the Pixel Watch 4 can hit around 3000 nits under direct sunlight. The Apple Watch X3 peaks at 1500 nits in regular use, but in sports mode, it can push up to 3000 nits as well, again for better durability, which really helps when you're outdoor, whether you're running or cycling. Now, when it comes to health tracking, all three of these watches are quite capable, but there are some clear differences in how far they go. So starting with the Pixel Watch 4, this one leans heavily on Fitbit, and that's a good thing. Sleep tracking and heart rate monitoring are both very reliable here. It uses the same multipath optical sensor that we saw in the previous model, and features like cardio load and readiness score give you a quick idea of whether your body is actually ready for the next workout. But the issue here is that some deeper insights in Fitbit are buried behind a paywall. And that's something you have to consider because you are paying about $400 for the watch, and then you have to buy another subscription just to unlock all the features. Now, keeping that aside, you also get a temperature sensor now in the Pixel Watch, which can give you a rough idea if you're coming down with something, along with SpO2 tracking for blood oxygen level. Now, the Pixel Watch 4 also gets a satellite SOS feature, which lets you contact emergency services even without a phone signal. Now, I obviously didn't test this feature myself, but it's one of those features that can be a real lifesaver. Plus, Google does offer it free for 2 years, which is nice. And again, this is unique to the Pixel Watch. With the Galaxy Watch 8 Classic, Samsung added a few interesting extras with regards to health tracking. You can now measure antioxidant levels by placing your finger on the sensor. There's also vascular load, which looks at your stress levels while you're asleep, and the H's index, which gives you a broader picture of your metabolic health. And all of this sits on top of the usual stuff like heart rate tracking, blood oxygen monitoring, and ECG. Now, coming to the Apple Watch X3, this is where things get really interesting. So in my experience, it consistently gave me more detailed and, more importantly, more reliable sleep tracking data. It breaks things down clearly into total sleep duration, sleep onset, and wake time. The other two do this as well, but where the OPPO stood out for me was with nap tracking. So it picked up my afternoon naps almost every single time, as long as there were over 20 minutes, which is something that the other two weren't always consistent with. It also goes a bit deeper when it comes to overall wellness. It looks at things like heart rate variability, resting heart rate, and your activity levels to assess both physical fatigue and even emotional state. And what's nice is that it actually factors in your lifestyle. So if you've had a rough night or slept late, it will call this out. In terms of core metrics, it's been very consistent. It has an 8-channel heart rate sensor, a 16-channel blood oxygen sensor, and the results have been accurate whenever I've tracked them. You also get a wrist temperature sensor, and there's an ECG function built into the button. Just place your finger on it for about 30 seconds and it can check for things like AFib, irregular heart rate, and a few other things. And then there is one feature that I actually ended up using quite a bit, the 60-second wellness overview. Basically gives you a quick snapshot of around 10 different health indicators covering heart health, sleep, and overall physical and mental state. So on days when something feels off, you can just run this once and get a fairly good idea of what's going on. So while all three are strong in their own ways, the Apple Watch X3 is the one that I felt was the most complete, consistent, and dependable overall. All right, so now when it comes to fitness tracking, all of these again are excellent. So I took them out for runs, used them for working out. I tried a few sports activities and even did some cycling. And honestly, all three here held up really well. You also get GPS tracking across the board, and all of them support dual frequency band L1 and L5. And what that basically means is more accurate tracking, especially in tricky areas. Even when I was near tall buildings where signals can usually get a little bit messy, all three managed to stay fairly consistent. But what I actually enjoyed more was the sheer number of workout modes that you get here. So all three watches have easily over 100 modes to choose from. Everything from basic stuff like jumping jacks and bicep curls to more serious activities like tennis, badminton, skiing, and swimming. Now, I also ran a quick step accuracy test. So I walked 1,000 steps, counting them in my head manually, which is something that I usually do when I test smartwatches. And the results were actually pretty interesting. So the Pixel Watch 4 was off by 11 steps. The Samsung was off by 7 steps, and the Apple Watch X3 was off by a single step. So pretty impressive accuracy here. And at the same time, the other two weren't wildly wildly inaccurate or anything. I've definitely seen worse from other watches in the past, but the thing is, when I wasn't actively testing and just going about my day, I found myself unconsciously leaning more towards the Watch X3, just because I knew they would give me a more accurate picture of how many steps I actually taken. Now, when it comes to running specifically, this is where I found the Apple Watch X3 to be a little bit more detailed. So it gives you metrics like ground contact time, average stride length, and even left to right balance. And the nice part is that you can see this in real time while you're running. So if you want to adjust your form, you actually can. Now, the Watch X3 also comes with an AI sports coach mode, which basically looks at your fitness level using a bunch of health indicators, and then it builds a personalized workout plan for you. Think of it like having a trainer on your wrist, just without the extra cost. Now, Samsung has something similar on the Galaxy Watch 8 Classic. It's called Running Coach. It evaluates your level with a short 12-minute run and then builds a structured program around that. It also adjusts things like intensity and frequency and even gives you feedback in real time to help avoid overtraining. Now, this next section on performance and battery is where the answer to this comparison gets much clearer. All three watches run Wear OS 6, but the experience isn't exactly the same. Samsung and OPPO both layered their own UI design on top, while the Pixel sticks closest to that clean stock Wear OS experience. Now, on the performance side, the Pixel Watch 4 uses Qualcomm's newer Snapdragon W5 Gen 2 chip. Samsung is using its own Exynos W1000, and OPPO is running the Snapdragon W5 Gen 1. But the bigger difference here, and the one that actually matters more in day-to-day use, is how OPPO handles performance and efficiency. The Watch X3 uses what OPPO calls a dual engine architecture. So essentially, you have the Snapdragon chip handling all the heavier tasks like apps and interactions, while a low-powered MCU takes over for lighter background operations. And the interesting part is that this switching happens in real time and completely in the background. You don't have to think about it at all, and this is exactly what helps the watch balance performance and battery life much better than the other two. So performance across all three watches is exceptional. I never faced any stutters or major lags that would ruin the experience for me, but what does ruin the experience for me is poor battery life. Now, the Pixel Watch 4 comes with a 455 mAh battery, while the Galaxy Watch 8 Classic has a slightly smaller 445 mAh unit. And that's a little bit surprising considering that it's a larger watch. Now, the Apple Watch X3, on the other hand, packs a much larger 646 mAh battery, and it still manages to keep the weight in check. And that's mainly because it's using a silicon carbon battery, which allows for higher capacity without making the watch bulky. So on paper, the Watch X3 clearly has an advantage, and in real life, it actually shows. So the Pixel Watch 4 and Galaxy Watch 8 Classic are not bad at all. That's not what I'm saying here. With the Watch 8 Classic, I was getting around 60 hours with the always-on display off, but once you turn the always-on display on, it drops pretty quickly to about a day and a half. And that's where it starts to feel a little bit limiting, especially when you're traveling. The Pixel Watch 4 was slightly behind, lasting around 50 hours with a mix of AOD on and off. But the Apple Watch X3 is on a completely different level. In smart mode, it comfortably lasts around 5 days with regular use, and even with heavier use, I was still getting close to 3 days. And if you switch to power save mode, it can stretch up to 16 days, which is honestly kind of crazy. It's nice to know that even if I'm covering an event for more than a week, I just don't need to bother carrying the charger for the Watch X3, which is not something that I can say for the other two. Now, when it comes to extra and fun features on these watches, they unsurprisingly now all have AI built into them. The Pixel Watch 4 is very much built around Gemini, so you can just raise your wrist, ask Gemini a question, and it'll go ahead and give you the answer. The Pixel Watch 8 Classic does the same, and the Apple Watch X3 also supports Gemini. You can trigger it with a Hey Google or just long press the crown, so that experience is pretty consistent across all three. But the Apple Watch X3 has a couple of extra tricks that I actually ended up enjoying. The first one, and I can't believe I'm saying this, you can control short form videos on your phone using the watch. So whether it's YouTube Shorts or even TikTok, you can just swipe through the videos right from your wrist and even control the volume using the button below. It's a bit wild and definitely not something I expected, but it's actually fun to use. The only catch is that this this only works with OPPO phones. The second feature is a remote camera control, and this is way more practical. So if you've used something like the Apple Watch with the iPhone, you already know how useful this can be. The Watch X3 lets you start recording, preview your shot in real time, and then basically control your phone's camera from your wrist. And for me, since I'm constantly shooting content, this was genuinely useful. You can set your phone up on a tripod, frame the shot properly using the watch, and then just shoot without having to run back and forth. So after spending a good amount of time with all three, it really comes down to what kind of smartwatch experience you're looking for. The Pixel Watch 4 is great if you want that clean Google first experience. It's simple, it's smooth, and features like Fitbit integration and even things like satellite SOS make it feel very smart and well thought out. The Galaxy Watch 8 Classic, on the other hand, feels the most like a traditional watch. It looks great, the rotating bezel is genuinely useful, and yes, again, it's a fun fidget toy. On top of that, it also packs a lot of health features, especially if you're already in Samsung's ecosystem. But if you step back and look at the bigger picture, the Apple Watch X3 just ends up being the most well-rounded of the three. It gets the design right with that lightweight build, it's comfortable enough to wear all day, and at the same time, it feels and looks premium. Durability is solid with sapphire protection, and it handles workouts, health tracking, and outdoor usage really well. Performance is smooth across the board, but what really sets the Watch X3 apart is how it balances that with battery life. Getting multiple days of use without having to constantly think about charging is a big deal for me, and it genuinely changes how I use a smartwatch. On top of that, features like more detailed fitness metrics, better consistency in tracking, and even things like remote camera control just add to the overall experience. So yeah, all three are good in their own way, but if you want something that does everything well, lasts longer, and just fits into your day without needing constant attention, the Apple Watch X3 makes a lot of sense. Hopefully this helped answer most of your questions, but if there's anything that I missed or if you still have any doubts, just drop them in the comments below. My name is Sagi, you're watching Tech Gear Talk, and like I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.